The GBNews Tavern is open. We've rolled out the barrel and I'm joined by Justin Hughes. Justin, good evening.
Good evening, cheers.
And welcome. Now, to become a fighter pilot in the modern age, I mean, in any age, whether it was the First World War, Second World War, and it seemed in those days, 10 hours training, here are the keys, off you go, jolly good luck. And some people could do it, and some people didn't last very long. But the modern day RAF, the RAF that you served in, the RAF that is there today, what are the qualities that a man or woman needs to become a fighter pilot? I mean, you flew Tornadoes, for example. What kind of character, what kind of levels of fitness are needed?
So if you were to ask a sort of general audience about this, you get answers like, good hand-eye coordination, good at numbers, things like this.
Yeah. And
those things are all true learning to fly. So there's a kind of basic bit that it's those things that everybody thinks it are. But then actually flying a fighter jet is more than anything about information management and decision-making quite quickly under pressure. And so it's the ability, there's a kind of core flying bit, but once you get beyond that, you need to get to the stage where that's kind of 10% of your brain power so that you can use the rest of it for doing the job. And it's really about the ability, as much as anything, to think clearly under pressure. And I'm not really sure how you train that. It sort of gets trained by experience and trial and error, and some people prove to be better at it. And I think the military put quite a lot of effort into trying to analyse this because it's quite expensive to train these people.
But you think it's aptitude?
There's definitely some aspects of it that are aptitude. They do tests on day one that are designed to find the people who've got these basic skills.
Yeah. Something extraordinary. We live in an age of rapidly advancing technology. But there's a unit out there called the Red Arrows.
Yeah.
And there I was, in the Mall the other Thursday. The Queen was on the balcony. That huge fly past that we had. And yet, who do they save to the end? But it's the Red Arrows.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same Red Arrows I was watching 50 years ago as a kid. And you were a Red Arrow executive officer. Why is the Hawk plane, which is not exactly state-of-the-art anymore, what's the magic of that? I mean, you clearly enjoyed your time.
Yeah.
In the Red Arrow. What's the magic of it? Why did it still in the Mall the other day get the Queen looking up smiling?
I mean, why does it work for you? You're the person who
Well, to me, I suppose what we see are 9 people working together in close formation. We know that it's an incredibly dangerous thing that they're doing, that one little error and it would be catastrophe. It's always a great display. But what I'm saying is, it just year after year after year, it never seems to lose.
Yes, and you're kind of right to imply that it's a jet that's been around for a while.
Yeah.
And so, the ultimate raison d'etre of the team is PR. So there's not really, albeit people tend to associate with recruitment, there's not really a recruitment problem. There's enough people who want to be fighter pilots. But it's all about public relations, and then beyond that, sort of projecting UK PLC. And you could argue that a jet that's like 30 years old maybe doesn't project UK PLC quite as well as we like to.
But it still seems to somehow.
But yeah, I think the jet actually works very well. If you see like the Americans, they've got display teams, super professional, really, really good. And they fly much more modern jets. And so they've got much better performance, make more noise, it's super cool. But one of the good things about that jet, the Hawk, is, it's very forgiving. It's a great sort of multi-purpose training jet, very sort of versatile and agile. But then it actually doesn't, it's almost an advantage, it doesn't go too fast. That you don't want to be doing huge moves, you want to do it all tight in front of the crowd. And I think that's one of the reasons that it stood the test of time, that the show is not so much about an amazing display of jet performance. It's about the complexity of what actually happens in front of the crowd. Yeah.
Were you proud to do it?
Oh, absolutely, yes. You go through these sort of stages. It wasn't on my radar, so I was flying the Tornado, and I kind of thought the Red Arrows was this kind of elite group of superhumans, and I was never going to get in. What we at the time called a Harrier Mafia. They're all Harrier pilots, if anybody's watching. And I got the chance, I was doing some flying on the Tornado in Cyprus. I got the chance to fly in a back seat, practice display. And even though I was a relatively experienced fighter pilot, it was eye-watering. I couldn't quite believe it. And I was fawning over this guy when we landed, saying how great he was. And he looked at me and he said, "Have you applied to join?" And I said no. And he said, "Well, if you don't apply, you don't get in." which kind of struck a chord, and I applied. And so you go through this process of applying, and then you get shortlisted, and it's all quite exciting, and you're quite close to it. And then you find you've got in, it's this amazing feeling. And then kind of reality strikes, because then you have to go and do the job. And the first winter is, stressful is the wrong word, but there's a steep learning curve, It doesn't matter what your background is, it's a great leveler. And it's hard work. So you're immensely excited and you're proud to have done it, but you're also conscious that you're just the custodian of this for a very short time.
Of course, it's sort of 3 years you served normally.
Yes.
Yeah. But your story there proves one thing in life to everyone at home: if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing. What do retired RAF fighter pilots do? And some become airline pilots for a few years, but you've chosen to pick up the skills and the disciplines that you've learned in the Royal Air Force to become an entrepreneur. Mission excellence.
Yep.
So what is it about? How do you, as a former military man, go into a private commercial company and give them value?
So this wasn't anything that was a big clever design. It wasn't like I did any of the things at business school about, what's the exit and the strategy and all the rest of these things. It was more that I decided to leave the Air Force, didn't really know what I wanted to do, didn't fancy the commercial pilot route at that point, and it was almost like I need to do something else. And so I'd seen other ex-military people doing this sort of thing. And so initially it started off that just running these workshops on high-performance teams, drawing lessons from my previous life, which people seem to really like. But it was only over time that I actually started to really understand how relevant some of it was, that people's opinion of what a fighter pilot does is formed by Top Gun or the news, neither of which are very accurate. They didn't play beach volleyball once. But the reality of it is it's 70 aircraft, 70 pilots taking off from different bases, different cultures, different nationalities, who've never worked together before, who have to do this really complex task under quite a lot of ambiguity and pressure and get it right first time. And if you sort of really drill into that and start to extract the core
planning,
principles...
it's performance, it's risk assessments, it's all those things.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't realise myself how relevant it would be until I'd actually spent a bit more time in the corporate world.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Final thought, Justin. You were an early pioneer, an adopter of cryptocurrencies. And governments all around the world, of course, have been terrified of them.
Yep.
Yet in America, where I spend some time, I see the much more widespread use, acceptance, adoption of cryptocurrencies. And yet, at the moment, it's collapso crypto, isn't it?
Yes.
The prices are Bitcoin was 68,000, it's 22,000. Ethereum was 4,800, it's now 1,100. Where does crypto go from here? What's its future?
So, actually, that's $1 million question, almost literally.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to. I got into this a bit by chance in that I was doing a master's degree, some sort of intellectual midlife crisis, and I had to do a thesis, and I was going to do it on pandemics. This was in about 2017.
Oh, that'll never happen. Don't worry about that.
That was exactly the decision. I kind of put this proposal together, and I talked about it with another guy on the course, Gordon, it was you, and we sort of talked about it, and he was like, yeah, nobody's interested in this, though.
Yeah.
So then I was looking for something else. It was an international relations degree, so I was looking for something else that was relevant there. Got into cryptocurrency in that sense, more from a sort of governance point of view, but I was analysing, is it a threat to the financial order? Yeah. To which I broadly concluded no. The adoption wasn't high enough, the utility was too difficult. And the pricing, I looked at it then. I think when I did this, it was $6,000, and I thought I've missed this. And I bought like $30 or something just so I could test the system, which then went up to some crazy number. It was only $30, and now it would have fallen again. And I think this is one of the crux of the problems about the adoption and utility that literally nobody knows. I mean, there's this argument that's pushed that it has no intrinsic value. Well, gold doesn't have an intrinsic value. The pound and the dollar don't have an intrinsic value.
Our paper money has no intrinsic value. No.
So there is, in theory, no reason that it can't be a viable currency.
It's going to be very interesting.
It just isn't. There just isn't enough trust or adoption.
Not yet, and not after this particular collapse.